Let's cut the crap, literally. In mid-July 2025, tens of thousands of residents in Hangzhou, one of China's so-called most developed cities, turned on their taps and got a noseful of raw sewage. That water smelled bad because it was contaminated by either human or animal waste. And here's the kicker. In a twisted turn of events, people actually came out of the shower smelling worse than when they went in. Normally, a hot shower means fresh and clean. In Hangzhou, it meant stepping out smelling like a subway station toilet in August. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a bad dream. This was Hangzhou's entire public water system failing at the most basic level and exposing the lot underneath China's gleaming surface. People were brushing their teeth with feces, cooking rice in feces, mixing baby formula with feces. And some poor families who thought they were treating themselves with a nice dinner ended up boiling expensive pork ribs in diarrhea broth. Imagine spending 300 yuan on dinner only for your whole house to smell like a sewer exploded in your soup pot. And for 15 straight hours, the government said nothing. You know a system is rotten when a city like Hangzhou, home to Alibaba, global tech conferences, and endless government bragging rights, can't keep literal feces out of residential tap water. This wasn't some backwater town. This was a city that just hosted the Asian Games, a place Beijing shows off as a model of modern China. And yet, on a humid July day, people across Yuhang district began gagging over their kitchen sinks. The tap water wasn't just brownish or cloudy, it stank. We're talking about the unmistakable smell of diarrhea, rotten gut churning. And what did the authorities do? Lie, delay, distract, spin, deny. It took more than half a day for the city to even acknowledge something was wrong. And by that point, the damage was done. Let's stop sugarcoating. The water wasn't poisoned by some harmless organic matter. It was poisoned by pig farms all across Yuhang upstream of Hangzhou's water sources. Thousands of illegal and barely regulated pig farms operate next to rivers and reservoirs. Water from these operations, we're talking about tons of feces, animal feed runoff, is routinely dumped into the waterways. Everyone knows it. The locals know it. The government knows it. But no one stops it because in China, money talks and enforcement is a joke. When July's heavy rain hit, all that feces overflowed directly into the water source. And thanks to a totally absent monitoring system, the contaminated water flowed straight into millions of homes. No filter, no testing, no alert. Hangzhou residents drank what the pigs dumped. That is the truth. And here's where it gets infuriating. While Hangzhou's residents were literally gagging over their own tap water, Chinese state media has been attacking Japan non-stop for releasing treated, tested nuclear wastewater from Fukushima. They ran scare stories, they banned Japanese seafood, they whipped up nationalism and screamed about how Japan was poisoning the ocean. And just to really drive home the hypocrisy, while CCP screamed about Japan's poisoning the ocean with treated Fukushima water, they conveniently left out one fact. Japan's release contains 1/5 the tritium, the harmful element, that Chinese nuclear plants dump every year, just from routine daily operations. That's right. The same government pretending to be the ocean's guardian is silently dumping far more radioactive water behind closed doors. Meanwhile, back at home, Hangzhou families were showering in water that smelled like a public toilet in a heat wave. The government couldn't even send a text alert in time, but they had plenty of time and money to run a global disinformation campaign against Japan. This wasn't just hypocrisy, this was criminal negligence wrapped in propaganda. So let's ask the obvious. How the hell does feces end up in the tap water of a major Chinese city in 2025? Because the CCP doesn't care about actual governance. They care about optics. While trillions are spent on the Belt and Road, boondoggle, handing out loans to bankrupt dictatorships, ghost cities where no one lives but the lights stayed on for propaganda videos, military flexing with aircraft carriers and missiles that get paraded on national TV. All the taxpayers' money squandered, while the basic infrastructure that keeps people alive, water, sewage, safety, is falling apart. The water pipelines are old, unmonitored, sometimes even share corridors with sewage lines. One heavy rain, one lazy official asleep at the wheel, and boom, you're drinking pig feces. China can launch rockets to space, but it can't separate waste from water. And that says everything. Now let's talk about Hangzhou government's response. Cowardly, clueless, and criminal. Every layer of governance failed here, and they didn't even bother to apologize for it properly. First off, water is a basic public utility. So, why didn't they just shut it off? Water is not a luxury, it is the most fundamental service a government can provide. The minute you suspect contamination, you shut it down, you cut the tap, you send emergency supplies, you protect your people. But Hangzhou, they did nothing. People continue to unknowingly drink brown, reeking sludge for half a day before the city even acknowledged the problem. Why wasn't there an emergency cutoff switch? Why wasn't there a backup water supply ready to go? Why wasn't there a mass text alert, a single warning? Second, the water company didn't detect the problem. The people did. Let that sink in. No alarms were triggered. No quality checks caught it. No one tasked with quality control noticed the stench. The only reason this blew up all over the Chinese social media is because ordinary families started posting about the awful smell online. So here's the uncomfortable truth. There's no smell test, no real-time monitoring, no system that checks the water before it hits your home. If your tap water smells like feces, it is your job to figure it out. This is not just neglect. This is a system that doesn't care if its people get sick, as long as no one hears about it. And worse than that, the fake apology. No real compensation. After the public outrage exploded, the government scrambled to do damage control. They blamed organic matter. They said it was harmless. And you know what? They handed out 5 tons of free water per household as compensation. A gesture so insulting, it was borderline offensive. What about the families that got sick? The elderly who drank the water and suffered symptoms? The kids with diarrhea? The pregnant woman. Where was the free medical care for these people? Where was the real apology? Where was the justice? Nowhere. Just a few fired low-level bureaucrats and one scapegoated guy arrested for spreading rumors, even though he was right. And here's the most heartbreaking, soul-crushing part of this whole scandal. No one stood up. No protests, no lawsuits, just quiet obedience. People accepted the government's lies, filtered their water, flushed their taps, and moved on. No revolt, no system in place to prevent similar disasters in the future. Just learned helplessness. That's how deep the authoritarian rot goes. When people drank, pig feces from their own faucet and don't even raise their voices, the system is broken beyond repair. It's not just the water that's contaminated, it's the mindset. The Hangzhou water crisis is not a one-off mistake. It's a warning, a red flag, a smoking gun. It tells us everything we need to know about the real state of China. A government that lies more than it leads. An infrastructure system that is collapsing under its own weight. A society so beaten down by propaganda and fear, it no longer fights back. Hangzhou's citizens drank feces because their government doesn't care, and because they have been trained not to resist. China can't even deliver clean water in its model cities. So ask yourself, what happens when the real crisis hits? When the economy collapses? When the banks fail? When a social contract finally snaps? If peak farm runoff can bring a city to its knees, what happens when the dam really breaks? This isn't about one city or one scandal. This is about a decaying governance, covering its collapse with glitter and lies. The CCP's China isn't rising, it is rotting. And Hangzhou just gave us a taste, straight from the tap.